Do you feel like you're living in a constant Cold War? Are you old enough to remember what that's like? The war against terror or the war against drugs? These wars where you feel like you've got no power because culture is continually trying to imprison you, pinion you down with its authoritarian ideals. Well, when I spoke to Krystal Ball off of Breaking Points, she and I discussed what is the solution to this. And we came up with the idea that the options that face us now are either an authoritarian state or a new kind of direct democracy based on assembly, real freedom. And this woman, Krystal, she's a progressive liberal. She works inside of media. Let's see what she says, because I tried to confront her as best as I could with what I believe to be the inefficacy of existing systems. And she, as a Democrat, had some interesting things to say. Stay to the end. Something that's peculiar that's happened sort of around Trump, post-Trump, still now, is that the right provide the more radical voice. The right provides the more anti-establishment rhetoric. I, of course, am vehemently opposed to where most people I've spoken to on the right when it comes to sort of civil rights and immigration and all of those kind of issues. But when it comes to like anti-establishmentism and, or as you would say with your show with Saga, anti-elites, like that's where I feel like the stronger rhetoric is coming from, at least from the mainstream established left. You're not getting, it's become puritanical authoritarianism, devoid of kind of spirituality, of like care, nurture, other than the kind of insipid, kind of sentimentalist, rootless, performative morality. I feel that what is required is I've been thinking about this, specifically what I've been thinking about is anarchism and left libertarianism, the idea of individual freedom and empowered community, meaningfully empowered community, meaning the ability to control the life of the members of your community without the intervention of the state and without the ubiquitous control of big business. I suppose the challenge that presents is if you don't have a centralized state authority, how do you challenge corporate authority? But at the moment, the state doesn't do that anyway. It supports it. So, so I wonder what you think about that. Do you think that what's required is a bolder vision? And do you think those bolder visions are sort of metered, controlled, curtailed as a result of the events of the last century?
Yes. And I think, the Cold War was particularly effective for stifling any kind of debate. But it's not just the Cold War. I was actually just reading, I don't know if you know the history of the mine wars that happened in the early 1900s in West Virginia. There was a bloody battle for mine workers who were working in, abhorrent, basically indentured servitude, dangerous, low paid, having to live in company towns and only get paid in scrip. Just the worst conditions you can possibly imagine. So there was a bloody uprising that was quashed ultimately by federal government troops where lives were lost in order to try to win the right to unionize. And, ultimately in the end, they were successful in being able to win a union and win some better working conditions and higher wages and those sorts of rights were ultimately won in the end. But that history, which is a very proud history of white and black and immigrant workers coming together and fighting for their own rights, has been completely erased from even West Virginia textbooks. There was actually a law that was passed that for decades prohibited the teaching of this, incredibly important history. So, it sounds like conspiracy theory, but there have been incredibly explicit and active propaganda campaigns to make sure that everybody stayed in line, that people didn't cause trouble the way that those coal miners caused trouble back in that era, to erase that part, to tell you that, that's not possible, that that's not a good thing, that none of that happened, so that you feel like the only options available to you are within these really narrow confines, effectively, the right version of neoliberalism and the left version of neoliberalism. That's been extraordinarily successful. But I think that some of the success of that propaganda war is starting to wane, which is why you see, people flocking to podcasts like yours, people flocking to shows like ours, people flocking to other alternative outlets because they feel like there's this whole world outside of what's being spoon-fed to them that they want to explore, that they want to think about, that they want to ask questions about, that they want to access. So the hopeful part of me thinks that, those methods of extreme control, the effectiveness of them are starting to wane. I believe we're in a real in-between time right now. And I don't actually, you mentioned Steve Bannon, and he said, the only options are populism. It's only a question of whether it's populist left or populist right. I don't know that I agree that that's the case. I see the options as either you can have actual democracy of the type that you're talking about, where people truly have a stake in the affairs in their community and their country, or you can have the direction that we've been heading in for decades now, which is increasing authoritarianism and increasing police state, where dissent is, rather than welcoming dissent, let's have a debate of ideas and exchange. Let's see who's got the better ideas and allow them to win out in a free marketplace. It's no, we're going to censor you. We're going to just make it so you can't even say that. We can't even allow that point of view. You see it, in terms of the militarization of police departments throughout the United States and the actual crackdowns that we've seen, especially with regards to the Black Lives Matter movement and the aggressive militarized response that they were met with. You see it with the ever expanding surveillance state, that Edward Snowden helped to expose, that has just continued to grow and grow and grow unabated. I think you have a lot of people who feel very uncertain and very scared about what the future is going to hold for themselves and for their family. I think you see people who, genuinely saw the Trump movement as something extraordinarily terrifying, where these old, ugly ideas that we felt like maybe we're starting to kind of put behind us were brought back into the mainstream. And the freak out to that, and the response to that has been, we're just going to clamp down. We're not going to allow any of these, anything that's outside of this narrow confines, we don't want to hear about whatsoever. And so to me, those are really the two possible directions that things go in. You either go in a direction where you actually trust people, you believe in the basic decency of people, you believe in their ability to have a say in the affairs of the nation, or you have increasing authoritarianism, increasing police state crackdowns. So far, we can see the path that we've been on, but I really think those are kind of the two only choices available.
Well, do you agree with Krystal, or are you more inclined to agree with me? Hit me up in the comments below with exactly what you think about this video. Give it a thumbs up, or not possible no more. Please subscribe to this channel and have a look at this video if you've enjoyed the one you've just watched, and please consider learning how to meditate and signing up as a subscriber for my Awakening side channel. If you enjoyed that conversation, it's available in full on Luminary. You can subscribe to that if you want to, and please sign up to my mailing list so I can stay in direct contact with you continually. I'm performing live all over the UK at the moment, and I'd love to see you there. Stay free.